Good evening. I'm Eve Powell, filling in for world traveler Hady Raphael, animating the podcast tonight. On tonight's episode of The Ball is Round, Montreal finally have some success for us to discuss after progressing in the Canadian Championship earlier the week and recording their first clean sheet of the MLS season over New York Red Bulls. All that and a whole lot more on episode 128 of The Ball is Round. And I am thrilled to be joined once again by Elias, my lovely co-host. How are you, my good sir?
I am doing great. How about you?
I cannot complain. Of course, anybody who saw me yesterday knows probably that I am feeling a little fragile today. But it was a well-spent weekend, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, so super pleased to be here with you. I know last week when you and I talked on our pod, we said, oh my gosh, I really, really hope when we come back next week, being today, we have something positive to discuss. And asking you shall receive. Yeah.
They delivered,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, took their sweet time. So we were due.
Yes. They made us wait for it.
Yeah, exactly. I feel bad for Hady. He missed it. He was on his world travel.
He's definitely enjoying his a bit delayed, but he's definitely enjoying it all the same.
Undoubtedly. And say hi to Roberto. There we go, Roberto Tirinardi. Hello, everyone. A win has put a smile on my face. Likewise, my good sir. Awesome. Nice to see you. So will we dive right into last night's match, given that is kind of the more I don't want to be like actualité, but we're an English podcast, so the more current topic. And let's get started. So first and foremost, let's look at the starting 11. Here's our graphic. So we have Jonathan Silva in net, Aaron Herrera as right wing back with a 3 central defender trio of Gabriela Corbo, Rudy Camacho, and Joel Waterman, with Elias filling in as left wing back. Victor Wanyama, Bryce Duke, Mathieu Chouanière were in central midfield, And then we had Ariel Laster and Chinonso Ofor representing up front. So what do you think overall? Is this probably the strongest starting 11 that Montreal can offer right now?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In terms of players right now, I think that goes without saying. I think that when George Campbell is, now that George Campbell's had 2 substitute appearances and is probably going to be fully integrated into the squad, he might have something to say about that. But I think in the whole, it's definitely the best we can expect right now, given that, they still do have somewhat of an injury crisis going on. But, performances like this are what kind of do appease those worries a lot. I think that, someone like Hady and Elias, who was very vocal about not enjoying his time at wingback, is maybe starting to,
come to terms with it.
Exactly. He had a lot of freedom and he was really enjoying himself. So I think when the going is good, right, you see everything with rose-tinted glasses. Even someone who's playing out of position and not necessarily loving the position, when you have that freedom and you're rolling and playing well, then obviously that you kind of
it
put
helps.
A smile on your face. Exactly.
It definitely does.
So, yeah,
it
as far as
helps.
Starting 11, I'm not surprised about any really
me neither.
Any omissions. So good on Losada for playing his best 11 and not really taking any chances like he did against DC. And, this is.
Oh, yeah, we learned the hard way on that one.
This starting 11, exactly.
Yeah, agreed. And just before we dive on into the match, so Patrick, good win last night. Need to keep getting better. Agree. Hopefully we add someone on the offensive side before midnight tomorrow. Dun, dun, dun. I've got my phone right by me just in case something happens.
Just in case, yeah.
We might have to do a breaking news segment in the podcast. You never know.
They do love breaking news the second we finish recording.
Right?
Something happens,
right.
They do love doing that. So keep your ears peeled for the second the podcast is done, because then they'll probably announce, that they're getting messy or something. But
there you go. I'm pretty sure Miami has
first tips on that, probably.
Yeah. Alas. All right. Let's dive into the action at Stade Saputo last night. So there was about 14,000 fans in attendance, which is really funny because I was talking to Tate at the tailgate. That's actually the number I gave him. I said, I think there's going to be
14,000?
about 14,000. Yep. I said, I think
Yeah,
there's
that's
going
a
to be
fair
about
estimate.
14,000. Yeah. And I kind of just pulled that
I
number
mean,
out of my arse.
there was 16
And the,
against DC, and
yeah.
apparently there were a lot of tickets sold in bundles, like the first game at the Olympic Stadium and the first game at Saputo
Mm,
Stadium, which is why I thought that was so high. Like last year, for example, it took them 9 games to crack 16,000. All 9
yeah.
games of last year were below 16,000. So
Yeah.
14, I think, given the quality of the team, given that the form that they're in is a bit more representative. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully that can be steady
Yeah.
increase, right? That's as we saw last year.
Well, yeah, we'll see. I think definitely when it comes to Montreal, if there isn't, a star bringing fans to the seat, then Montreal fans are also driven by results. So you need one or the other. At present, Montreal
That's
sadly
true.
has neither.
Unless you're
Um,
the Habs, it's mostly results
but
driven.
yes, yeah, but the Habs have like a good 100 years of existence on Montreal. So
Yeah, that's also true.
yeah, exactly. All right. So we kicked off with Montreal as the home team. And of course, what we've seen from Montreal doesn't necessarily mean that they have put their stamp on the game when they have been the home team, sadly. But the New York Red Bulls were also coming in and they had a fair few injuries of their own.
Yeah,
These were two teams that were definitely not fielding their choice starting 11s. Of course, they do also have the player who is suspended for racist comments, and that suspension is ongoing. So a designated player, was also missing for that reason. So both teams were seriously just damaged, honestly, coming into this match. But right off the bat, I definitely felt like I sensed a little bit more liveliness, I think, within the Montreal team. Like it felt like they were not going through the motions. It felt like they had a hunger out there when
yeah,
I was
yeah.
watching.
Yeah, no, it was definitely in terms of energy, it was a better start. Again, they did concede a lot of dangerous chances in the first 10,
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes, which is not
Mm-hmm.
ideal. And again,
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Osiewa stepped up big at like 6 minutes in, right? Way earlier
He
than a goalie is ever
did.
supposed to step up.
He
But
did. Like,
yeah, he
let's
came in
talk
clutch.
about that.
Yeah, I mean he's really been something of a revelation, right? You could not
Mm-hmm.
have asked for a more inconvenient start to an MLS career than what you've kind of
Mm-hmm.
handed Jonathan Osiewa with a damaged
Mm-hmm.
back line and injury riddled midfield, and then you're kind of just thrown into the deep end with no floaties and just expected to tread water. And he's done
Yeah.
more than that, right? Like even the games that we were talking about this, even the 2 games where you concede 9 goals collectively, right? He
He was kind of
did
left
his job to the best
hanging
of
out to
his
dry
ability.
on those.
Exactly. Of the 9, I could maybe fault him for like 3/4 of one of them, right? Like at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, the rest of them were point blank or passes across the face of goal, stuff that you really don't expect the goalie to save, and that you expect maybe your
Yeah.
defense to step in and kind of cover. And
Sadly, no.
again, like at the beginning of the game, when they were giving up a lot of space, credit to the defense, they were finally showed some composure. They weren't just running like chickens with their heads cut off inside their own area. They were actually,
Mm-hmm.
covering all their bases and defending like a unit for once, which is, again, something we'll talk on later in the pod when they were down to 10 men. But that,
Mm-hmm.
like from the start, you could tell that this defense was a lot more aware of their situations, a lot more aware of each other, which
Yeah.
is we haven't seen
Yeah.
all year.
Very much agree with you there. But on the first save in the 6th minute that Jonathan Sirois
Yeah.
had to make, unfortunately, I think maybe the players were listening a little too literally to Hernan Lozada, because what had happened to kind of cause the turnover was almost that Mathieu Choinière and Bryce Duke got in each other's way
Yeah.
when they were trying to challenge a New York player for the ball. And of course, he squirted through, and they were just tangled up in each other, basically. But yeah, no, you're correct. It was a really great pass played from Caceres to Carmona, who was kind of just hanging on the shoulder of the defender there. And I thought it was a really dominant show by Jonathan Sirois to come out
Yeah, there was no hesitation. He just
no,
felt it.
exactly. It was very decisive. And I think that's very much something that Montreal needs, especially with the defense being as shaky as it had been, is it kind of exudes some confidence, which is good,
Yeah.
because we know that they've definitely been left scratching their heads a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that to say the least.
Yeah. And so, like you said, in the first about 10 minutes to 15 minutes of the match, definitely New York did dominate more possession and turned it into more chances. However, I still didn't feel, aside from that first save that Jonathan Serrois made in the 6th minute, it wasn't until probably the chance by Corey Burke in the 13th minute where he kind of had the goal at his mercy almost, and he shot it into Rosette.
Yeah,
Although super quality chances for the most part. And I think that is something that Montreal improved on from previous matches. What did you think?
yeah, I think that because again, even that shot in the 13th minute was not very obvious. He's on his weak foot. He's from about 20 yards
Mm-hmm.
out, so it's not an ideal situation. They kind of did.
Mm-hmm.
It was a risky spot, and they managed to mitigate that. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, when the defending is in front of them,
Mm-hmm.
usually this back line can be
They're
trusted to
okay.
be a
Yeah.
bit more solid, right? It was situations
Mm-hmm.
like that run in behind 6 minutes in where Rudy Camacho again got like targeted, and I was talking about this in the press box. It's a really worrying sight to see that your
Mm-hmm.
central defender, which is supposed to be the most reliable and the most solid and the most
Mm-hmm.
the anchor of your defense, and he's
Yeah.
consistently getting targeted, right? And people are
Mm-hmm.
and it's almost like the tactic is go for him, and that's not a great look. Again, Rudy Camacho had a
No.
significantly better game. I will, give credit
Yeah.
where credit is due. It seems like
Sure.
last night was a step forward, but the fact that they're still going at him is worrying because of the fact that that does show a certain amount of weakness. Right now, Rudy Camacho did
Mm-hmm.
kind of reply after those first 15 minutes and had a solid game for the rest of
Mm-hmm.
the 90. It was still not great seeing them go at him. It was almost like they went out of the
Yeah.
way to kind of play down the middle, which again is Red Bull's soccer, but they were almost
Yeah.
ignoring the flanks completely and going after Camacho, which is not what I love about the way the defense is perceived.
I mean,
But
no, but at the same time, it doesn't surprise me because of how the defense
yeah,
has started this year, and particularly when
exactly.
we think of versus Vancouver, his red card. When we think of versus New England as well, any one of the defenders actually in that particular match,
Yeah,
we've seen that as if you can get in behind these defenders, you basically it's just you and Jonathan Serrois for forever. And Patrick actually brings up an interesting point. He says, I think this is Camacho's last year with the club, and I'm kind of inclined to agree, honestly.
yeah. I mean, we talked. I kind of said something that may end up being a foot in my mouth. Where I didn't think that I thought that maybe two, but definitely not all three of the starting center backs and Miller, Camacho, and Waterman were going to leave. I thought that there was no way that could happen, but with Miller being traded and Camacho again, I
Mm-hmm.
agree, unlikely to come back. Now that his contract is up, all that's
Mm-hmm.
left is kind of Joel Waterman. And if he has another good
Mm-hmm.
season, or if he kind of his stock increases and Montreal pulls the trigger, then this is a completely fresh back line. So that may be something that could be for better or for
Mm-hmm.
worse. Again, you kind of get rid of people that are entrenched in their habits. Rudy Camacho was talking about how you spend 3 years learning this very slow and methodical way to play under
Mm-hmm.
Thierry Henry and Wilfried Nancy, and now you're asked to do essentially the complete opposite because Hernan Losada wants the ball to move quickly, especially when he's
Mm-hmm.
building out of the back. He doesn't want his center backs to take too long. The center back
Yeah.
usually the middle center back receives the ball, plays it out to a wider center back, and then they progress that way. And he wants the
Mm-hmm.
ball gone immediately, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
something that Rudy Camacho's talked about not loving. So
Mm-hmm.
if that sentiment is shared across a lot of the people that were integral in Wilfried Nancy's system, that we could see more than him
Mm-hmm.
just leaving,
Yeah.
if contracts are expired and stuff. But
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to find out just how much he kind of adapts, because this was definitely a step in the right direction in terms of him coming to terms with this Losada style of play. It was definitely a much more voluntary. You could tell that
Yeah.
he was making an outright effort to move the ball quicker than what he's used to. You saw him struggling
Yeah.
against DC, where he got caught in possession a number of times. So
Yeah.
it's nice to see that there is baby steps, right? That's all we want. It's
Agreed.
just progress, baby steps.
Exactly. Well, that's what you and I know. It was, given it's just been you and I the last couple of weeks. I know Hady when he was here as well. He was saying the same thing, or along the same lines. We're saying like we want to see some consistency, like some
Yeah,
consistent tactical practices being in place from match to match. and you want to see as well incremental improvement match over match. And well, I think we did. And actually, speaking of Hernan Lozada's tactics and his love of a quick moving ball, actually worked out well for Montreal because
Did,
in the
yeah.
25th minute, a great phase of transition play culminated in Bryce Duke passing the ball to Aaron Herrera in his much, I think, more comfortable position on the right flank.
Yeah.
And he played one of those so dangerous low crosses into the sixth ball where it's damned if you do, damned if you don't touch it as a
Yeah.
defender. And, the defender Reyes, he felt compelled to go for it because, of course, Chinonso Ofor was right behind him. And so if he didn't go for it, Chinonso Ofor was free to score. And it culminated in an own goal in the favor of
Yeah.
Montreal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
what
that
did you...
was,
there's a lot that I liked about this goal, but you go ahead.
I mean, this is why they brought in Aaron Herrera, right? This is why he got
Yeah.
so many comparisons to Alistair Johnston. And it's not because of his ability to play center back. It's clear that,
Mm-hmm.
he can't, it's one of those he can play there, but he shouldn't. Aaron
Mm-hmm.
Herrera, as a more offensive leaning wing back, was
Mm-hmm.
completely in his bag last night. Him and Bryce Duke are clearly getting along well. And that's something else we were talking
Mm-hmm.
about, how Herrera still hasn't really completely gelled with the team, and it was kind of
Yeah.
showing. But him and Duke are really appear to be on the same wavelength because they were looking for each other a number of times. And it reminded me a lot of, in fact, Sam Piet and Alistair Johnson last year that were
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
linking up constantly, and Piet really found Johnson in some good spots
Mm-hmm.
down the flank. And so Bryce Duke put the ball on a platter for Johnston, for Herrera a
Mm-hmm.
number of times. And
Mm-hmm.
this was by far Aaron Herrera's best game with the club. And I
Yeah.
think that it's no coincidence that him and Duke were playing so well together. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
Losada definitely noticed that and is probably going to keep exploiting that, because you kind of did see it on the other side with Hady and Elias, but Bryce
Mm-hmm.
Duke and Aaron Herrera together were brilliant, right? And they did
Yeah.
create the first goal. And again, as a center back, I kind of feel bad because it's one of those you kind of get your foot on the ball and roll the dice and hope you get lucky. And
Yeah.
he obviously wasn't. But when you have a player that could put defenders in those no-win situations like that with just a single ball,
Mm-hmm.
and he did it a number of times where he put the ball in really good spots. That's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what you need from someone that's that athletic already. That if they have that delivery, which you don't see unfortunately from someone like Brogiard, that
Mm-hmm.
it's exactly why they brought him in, and it was so nice.
No, and I'm really happy. Chan is as well calling out that he was being played at his natural position, and
Absolutely.
I think definitely, I think that's 150% better. I think with Corbo, Campbell is obviously coming back into fitness. He had some minutes against Vaughan, and he had just a very few minutes last night as well, so he should be coming back as well, and hopefully up to game fitness within the next couple of weeks. So that should, knock on wood, spell an end to
Yeah.
Aaron Herrera's adventures in
Yeah.
central defending. And I
That's
think we're all
definitely
very
that's
happy
definitely the
for
right
that.
word. Yeah.
Exactly. No, but overall, I thought it was a really well worked goal.
Mhm.
A guy like Bryce Duke, I think his creativity, and his quick thinking and just his nonchalance with, a pass that culminated in a goal, I think is something that was sorely missing in this side prior to his acquisition. I know the players were trying their hardest. I know Sean Rea was trying to, dribble through 100 opposing players and stuff. But at the same time, when you have the benefit of a few years of MLS experience,
Yeah.
those things can just come to you quicker. And so I think as well we saw his value on that particular play. So no, it was great. But speaking of, just kind of because I didn't really build it in anywhere, and I figured maybe we should. For me, I felt like last night looked a lot more like the players looked to be a lot more all on the same page together, and it felt
Yes.
like they and Hernan Lozada were both reading out of the same playbook this time,
Yeah. For
which I'm
once.
pretty sure, like last week, I did not think that they were on the same page at all, the coach and the players. But last night, I really did. I noticed Red Bulls, they will press and press and press, like they are the kings of the press in MLS. But I did notice Montreal seemed to be implementing more of a high press than they had in recent weeks.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
really nice to watch because again, we talked about how Hernan Losada was outcoached by Wayne Rooney last week. This week he was the one that did the outcoaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
He almost stopped the Red Bull press basically by how efficiently they were breaking down lines by again until the red card that we'll get to. But
Yeah.
for the first 10, 15 minutes of the second half, Red Bull didn't bother pressing or didn't bother pressing as hard as they usually do because
Mm-hmm.
that was how efficiently Montreal was kind of breaking their lines. And again, on the other side, Montreal won the ball back high a number of times, right? Again, that is kind of the give the you live by the sword and die by the sword, where if
Mm-hmm.
the press doesn't work, and then you give up a lot of space, and that did happen the first 15 minutes where there were a number of chances, and
Mm-hmm.
Red Bulls did have a lot of possession in dangerous spots. But as the press
Mm-hmm.
continues, eventually you're going to see the fruits of your labor. And again, this is and I also said after the game, this is the minimum performance, this is the minimum intensity, this is you work from here, this is you've established a baseline, good job, right? Ideally you establish that baseline from
Mm-hmm.
game one. That didn't happen. You established it on game seven, but it's there now, right? There's no going back. You
Yeah.
cannot deliver performances like you did against DC, or your performances like you did against Nashville or Austin, where you're kind of sitting back and hoping for the best. You now are
Mm-hmm.
have this quality, and you have this idea that we have clearly been show has been on show for 2 games in a row now. So
Yeah.
this has to be a continuation. Now there has to be
Yeah.
continuous improvement, right? Again, we said it,
Yeah.
baby steps, but every single game there has to be something that wasn't great last game. All of a sudden we're seeing improvement every single game because there's a lot of improvement still to be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you have to take your positives. But again,
I
every
agree.
single game you need to find your better yourself.
Yeah. Agree. And it looks like we have a guest creeper. I'm just poking
Random
fun.
cheats.
And we have Hady, who is, I believe, recovering from, he's sliding in here in our DM, if you will. Although they're public comments, so they're not really DMs.
Jet lag is a horrible thing.
As he recovers his jet lag with his intense travel back from Lebanon. So, hi, Hady. Hope you're not feeling too sleepy tonight and are feeling
Hopefully we
better.
don't
And
put
we'll
you to
see you
sleep.
next Sunday. Oh my god. Oh, I hope not. Okay. All right. So then let's roll on to make sure Hady stays awake. Let's keep him
Exactly.
entertained,
Keep them awake.
and the
Exactly.
rest of our listeners as well. Exactly. Okay. So later on, after the goal transpired, we had a really excellent chance towards the later stages of the half. It was a corner that Montreal had that wound up getting flicked on by actually a New York Red Bulls player, and landed on the head of Victor Wanyama. And I was sure that was going to be a goal in the 38th minute. And Carlos Cornell, the keeper for New York Red Bulls, made, I think, one of the best saves I've seen this season for sure. It was
Yeah.
so point blank.
Yeah.
And
That's one of those where you kind of just fling yourself at the ball and hope for the best. And he got his hands on
he
it.
caught it. He didn't even rebound it.
Yeah,
He held it.
yeah, that was very impressive.
It was
For
an
a guy that has
excellent.
kind of a weird history with Saputo Stadium, given that
Yeah.
2 years ago, uh,
Oh,
that
the penalty
infamous
kicks.
triple penalty, again, still one of the most stressful games I've ever covered in terms of
Yep.
having to rewrite my story. But um, that was it's always interesting when Carlos Cornell comes to Stade Saputo, and today he put
Yep.
on, for what it's worth, he put on a very strong performance, right? Even conceding 2 goals, he had a very good game.
Yeah. No, and credit to him where it's due. Like, I was out of my seat. So credit where it's due. Although we're happy he conceded 2 goals.
Yes, yes,
um, yeah, so just before we wrap up our first half discussion here, we do have Patrick's comment. Patrick noticed as well they were not throwing the ball forward blindly too much. They held onto the ball a bit more when they weren't down to 10. Yeah, I
yeah,
agree. Like that whatever was being tried last week versus DC clearly got thrown out the window. Thank goodness. Because I
yeah.
don't think anybody would be showing up to see that. And I think it was
Nope.
overall just a more palatable look. Like, it was easier on the eyes. Because I rewatched it,
Yeah,
before I rewatched the match before you and I, because I was like 3 sheets to the wind when I was watching it at the stadium. So I had to turn on the broadcast. Also, very grateful to Apple TV that like the broadcasts are available after the fact
yeah.
a lot
After the
more
fact,
quickly. Yeah. Because before they weren't always ready, and I was like, but yeah, anyway, it looked a lot nicer to see.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
just,
They
yeah, it was just much better. So anyway, Montreal, though they finished their first half with a 1-0 lead. They did have a quick scare right before the half wrapped up as Bryce Duke conceded a free kick in a dangerous position, but it wound up being put wide by Christian Caceres because Montreal had like a 7-man wall. And
Yeah,
so
it
his
was
only
one of the
option
biggest
was to
walls I've
kick.
ever seen, and it was
It was
dangerous.
massive. I was
I,
like,
the,
I was
the
watching them
funniest part
construct
is
this
that like
wall.
Bryce Duke was the one who laid down behind the
I
wall.
know.
And it was kind of funny, and I felt kind of bad because Bryce Duke's not the biggest guy, and his body length didn't cover the entire wall.
I know.
There was bits of the wall that were
Yeah.
kind of just exposed. And I was like, overall in the press box, we were like, that's a really like I understand why you put him and not like one of the bigger bodies behind the wall because you need people to clear the ball and any headers that might come
Mm-hmm.
up. But it was just kind of funny to
Mm-hmm.
notice that like I didn't see Bryce Duke until it was pointed out to me because he was so well hidden behind the wall that he was literally like his head or his like feet weren't sticking out. I was like, oh, just a little guy.
Just a little guy. Yeah. Anyway, nonetheless, whatever. Gigantic wall. It did the job at the end of the day.
Exactly.
And you know what? Given how defense has gone for Montreal this year, I can't blame them for wanting to have a 50-man wall.
Absolutely not.
All right. So yeah, first half wrapped up. So how did you feel going into that first half? Like if you were Hernan Lozada and you were the players going back into the locker room, how would you have been feeling?
I mean, going up 1-0 at home into the half against a team that does not
Mm-hmm.
score that much, even when they are fully healthy, is definitely,
Mm-hmm.
a bonus. Obviously there's stuff you want to fix and there's stuff you want to
Mm-hmm.
mitigate. And I'm sure that he addressed those. But in
Mm-hmm.
general, right, far more positives than negatives for once going into the locker room at halftime. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
also paid again, we were talking about how they concede 5 minutes into every game, for the
Mm-hmm.
second half of every game. I think the fact that it was a positive second half, a positive first half, and you go into it with a lead, maybe kind of fed into the fact that they didn't, or they came out
Mm-hmm.
much more
Yeah.
composed and kind of on the front foot. So again,
Yeah.
every game, right? More positives and negatives. That's all you want. Even if it's a
Exactly.
draw, more positives than negatives. That's
Yep.
all you need.
Nope. Exactly. Baby steps, like we said.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No. So overall, I think you're right. It did seem to be a more confident air that they left the pitch with, and so overall, I'm inclined to agree with you. I think I wouldn't have recommended any changes myself, certainly,
Yeah.
or anything like that, because I think, especially where this team has struggled so hard to find their footing, it's sort of if it ain't broke, don't fix it,
Yeah.
and that's kind of I think what I would have done. So I wasn't surprised to see no changes coming out into the second half or anything like that. So with that being said, Montreal did kick off the second half, and it was pretty evenly disputed overall. I didn't feel like New York were like you mentioned. They did Montreal did counter New York's press very very well, and so it felt like New York was not really getting out of second gear, and it felt honestly like Montreal was a, probably the most comfortable I've seen them in a match this season.
Yeah, even they look more comfortable than they did against Vaughn, which is saying
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
I feel like again, in the first half or for the first 60 minutes, they look like they were in the driver's seat for 50 of them, right? And against Vaughn, they
Hmm.
were they were in the driver's seat, but it was kind of just like this complacency after they got the two goals. They were just like, whatever.
Hmm.
Montreal kept on, building and kept on developing and kept on moving the ball really well and getting into
Hmm.
really dangerous spots, which is exactly what you want from a team. You're up 1-0. That doesn't matter. You have to go out there and continue pushing because if you sit back, you're not a team that is capable of sitting back right now.
Mm-mm.
So you have to continue to push and maybe try and go out there and kill the game. And honestly, they could have. There were a few chances, but
Yeah,
I'm happy with how they really asserted themselves in the second half and carried forward that momentum from the end of the
agree.
first.
Agree for sure. So in the 53rd minute, Elias did pick up a yellow card for a foul. I kind of thought it was a little bit of a harsh yellow card myself.
It was from behind. Like I don't think anybody
Yeah,
argued it too much, right? Like if it
no,
was hard, I mean, he was pretty generous with the yellows, so I wasn't
he
too shocked
was.
when he gave that. And it's from behind. I don't mind
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. No. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. I like I said, I rewatched it and I was like, eh. But yeah, no, I see how it could have been yellow, but I know you're right. The referee definitely was handing out yellows pretty easily last night, so probably that
Like
didn't help.
candy, yeah.
Yeah. Which is why in the 65th minute, Elias should have been a lot more intelligent with his management of the dead ball situation. Because
Yeah,
unfortunately, he
that
was and
what that
you
is
could see on
so
his
soft.
face when you could see on his face. So for anybody who may have missed the match
Yeah,
last night, Elias got sent off for a second yellow card, the second yellow card being picked up for kicking away a dead ball, which ironically one of his teammates had gotten a yellow card for earlier in the match.
yeah,
So it wasn't
yeah.
even like something that you can forget about.
Yeah, but I mean, like
um
the ball, like the first one is because it was sent, 30 yards away, and that one I understand
mhm,
why there was a yellow because it was
yeah,
like a deliberate, like sending it away.
yeah, like
Elias sent the
hoiking it,
ball
yeah,
like, he sent it like 5 yards, and I'm sorry, but that was so, especially for a second yellow card. And I understand that,
yeah.
like, there shouldn't be a higher grade of yellow that merits a second yellow, but it was such a petty call. I'm sorry. Like, nobody on the field even complained about it. They were
Well, I
mildly
mean,
annoyed.
factually, it's a yellow card, but
I
yeah,
know, but they were mild. Like, Red Bull players were
yeah,
mildly annoyed, but no one's like, "That's a second yellow." Ah!
hmm
Like, no, nobody thought it was a yellow, and that's why I saw him like blow his whistle,
hmm
and he started approaching him, and I'm like, that is. And the worst part is you can't argue
yeah,
with it because according to the
no,
laws of the game, you kick the ball away, you're
exactly,
delaying
no,
the restart
you
of
can't,
play and everything like that. And so that's why, like, there was no
yeah,
real complaint, but at the same time, that is incredibly weak. And that is like there's so many more things deserving of a yellow card
yeah,
than nudging. Like, it went 5 yards. Like, I think I don't even think it
yeah.
went 2 lines of grass. It was, come on.
Alas,
So,
yeah, and
alas,
we have
thank you,
Robbie who
Roberta. I
definitely
am
agreed with
vindicated.
you. We
I am
call.
vindicated.
Yeah, and just because it is on the topic of the left wing back who got, I'll mention Chan's comment here. So he says, seriously, guys, if Montreal want to be competitive for 9th or 8th place, they do need a new left wing back.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
I think that is right now one of Montreal's weakest positions. Obviously, it's not Iliadis's position that he's
No,
trained at. And it's certainly, even when Lassi Lappalainen is there, there are days that he does not look particularly comfortable. There are days that
he's
he
also
looks
just not
fairly
left-footed, right?
comfortable.
Yeah,
Also that slight issue.
yeah. But
No,
Lassi Lebanon and Georgia Quizera are both starting to get back to training with the team.
mhm,
And we should expect them to be training with the squad next week. And then
good.
hopefully Lassi is further along than Quizera is, who's still recovering
Hmm.
from his hamstring. That hasn't played a minute all
Hmm.
year. He's been injured. But Lassi should travel with the team.
Hmm.
But in terms of Quizera, that's still a bit of a. We'll see when he gets back with the training with the actual squad. So
Hmm.
that'll remain to be seen. And again, with Iliadi suspended, then the Chouanière play fullback if Lassie isn't healthy, and then it opens up an
Hmm.
entire bag. Rita Zouir is now, well, now we'll get to that later, but like, it does open an entire bag of cats that kind of just like you know degenerates further and further. And then there's like, if this happens
Hmm.
and this happens and this happens, so
Hmm.
it's we can talk about it at
Yeah,
length. The left back issue.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, but I mean, yeah, we'll see. They got through it with the actual personnel last year. They
Exactly.
got through the season, so TBD. But yeah, no, I do agree that it is, along with striker, which has so many question marks around it right now. Left back is definitely also a position with a lot of question marks around it.
Yeah.
Um, nope, so definitely agree. Anyway, back to the match. So Montreal went down to 10 men and they were going to be down to 10 men defending a 1-0 lead for the last 25 minutes of the match. How did you feel? How concerned were you? I was like, "Oh god."
I was kind of like admitting, not admitting defeat, but I was like, all right, this is, given the defense and the way that the defense
Mhm.
has played, it was like this feeling of impending doom that you're kind of just like, um, shit. But credit is due. You know, they parked the bus and they parked the bus in a very effective way. So tip my
Yes,
hat off to that.
they did park the bus. Like, it was not the most attractive, you
No,
know, last 25 minutes of a match. It was fairly utilitarian, to put it politely. And obviously, then New York did go on to dominate possession, although they did not really translate their possession into a ton of scoring opportunities. They did have, I think, one really good opportunity in the 69th minute or the 70th minute from Tom Barlow,
mhm.
which he put a header just off target on a corner. And of course, he's a very, very tall, very aerial, and dynamic player. So, other than that, though, I think the chances that New York had were not like they were not terribly troubling for Jonathan
Yeah,
Sirois.
yeah,
Um,
and again, that's credit to the defense in front of him, right? Which
yeah,
finally was able to repel consistent attacks, which is something we haven't seen all year. You know, when they're defending deep in their own
yeah,
box, they kind of do get a little bit frantic and they get a little bit crazy. And you know, last night they
hmm
were extremely well composed. They defend, like I said before, they defended as a unit and they defended um very intelligently. So
hmm
I'm very happy that with the performance, especially with Gabriela Corbo, who had a
yeah. I
very
thought he
mature
looked
performance
great.
rate.
Yeah.
Yeah, one-on-one defending, you know, when it's stationary and he doesn't have to run, Rudy
hmm
Camacho is very capable. Joel Waterman, we know how good of a defender he can be. And Gabriela Corbo has someone that hasn't really had the chance to shine as
hmm
much. But last night, credit he was faultless. You know, he had a very strong game. That entire left side for Red Bulls was almost entirely marked out of the game because him and
Yeah.
Herrera work very well together. And it's kind of a
Yeah.
shame because that's kind of forcing Joel Waterman to the left. And without the ball, that's not a problem. But with the ball, you could tell that he does not
It's
like building from the back on the left
yeah.
side. He
Yeah.
hates it. So
Yeah.
maybe Hernan
He
Losada is going to have to tinker a little bit with how everybody lines up.
perhaps,
Yeah.
but he has done some good things. Because I recall when Montreal went to play against New York Red Bulls last year. I think he
Hmm.
was towards the left hand side of the pitch. I'm not sure, he wasn't positioned there. He just like casually was there, if I recall correctly. And that was when he did his long pass to Ramel Kyoto. It was on that side of
Yes,
the
that,
pitch
that,
where
that led to the goal.
with the special goal that was scored. So, speaking
Special is
of
a good
Carlos
word.
Carnal,
Special is a good, yeah. Special is
sorry,
a good,
guy.
good word.
Yeah,
And yeah,
exactly.
he's look,
So he
he's a
can,
very
but
capable
yeah.
defender. Yeah, there's no arguing that. I just think that it's quite obvious given how good we know that Joel Waterman is that he's
hmm
not at his best on the left side, and I don't think he
hmm
enjoys it all too much. So again,
No.
this is again, you know, I know Sada had a tricky situation because you couldn't have enough players. Now you have too many players that had a good performance or have had two good performances in a row. So you kind of have to
hmm
like, oh crap, you know, who am I putting? And you know that opens another bag of cats when someone like Samuel Piet comes back healthy, right? Because now who in the
Right.
midfield is missing time. So it's
hmm
we're finally
I
in the
mean,
situation where Hernan Losada has to make decisions, but for good reasons rather than bad reasons, which again
yeah,
is improvement. So it'll be interesting to see how he fares with that.
agree. Um, so, will we talk? Speaking of the midfield, should we talk
Yes.
about what for me was my favorite moment of the match? 110% my favorite moment of the match. In stoppage time. So it was the
Mhm.
92nd minute of the match. Mathieu Chouanière picked the ball off of a New York player deep within his own half and sent the ball forward to the lonely Chinonso Ofor, who was, trying to represent some attacking
The
threat.
striker.
Yep. And after sending the ball to Chinonso Ofor, Mathieu Chouanière absolutely sprinted up the pitch despite the fact that he'd been playing 90 minutes already. And Chinonso Ofor, of course, New York had committed so many bodies forward that Chinonso Ofor really didn't have a ton of defense covering him. And he was able to get a shot off in close range, which was saved by the keeper. But the rebound, which was spilled, was finished up by Mathieu Chouanière.
Yeah.
I was so happy for him.
Yeah.
My
It,
heart was so
it
warm.
was it was the kind of the cherry on top of already a borderline perfect game. He was everywhere in the midfield. He is exactly what you kind of need as a counterbalance to Victor Wanyama. You
Mhm.
do need the energetic, constantly running, three lungs in your
Mhm.
chest ball winner. Because
Mhm.
let's face it, Victor Wanyama is not going to run down oppositions all that often. And Patrick, put the
Mhm.
comment over Patrick's right. 04 should have buried that. I'd hope better from a striker who's in a position like that. But at the end
Mhm.
of the day, Mateusz Wanyama having he kind of said to the game was funny, like I had nothing in the tank, so I just emptied it even more, right? Kind of following up that play because it's very easy as someone who had played 90 minutes, just ran your heart out to play the ball into 04 and kind of just sit there and be like,
I'm
I
like,
did
oh
nothing.
yeah, I go to the corner flag
But
or
no,
something. Yeah.
but no, he continued running, continued followed up to offer that support, and he ended up being rewarded with a sitter.
Yeah.
And it's so nice to see him rewarded because he's been
Mhm.
by far Montreal's best player this year, and
Mhm.
he's this was by far his best game of the season. He
Yeah.
was imperious in the middle of the park, and he was all over the place. I thought there were two of them, genuinely.
Honestly, yeah. And Patrick had another comment, which I think is interesting. So can we officially say that we found Kone's replacement within? Chouanière has been our best player by far, and he looks best in midfield. Honestly, this has been definitely my favorite season of his so far, even as
Yeah,
crap as
sure.
this season has been to start. And like even in the match versus I believe it was Vancouver, he wound up wearing the captain's band for a little while, and then I was
Yeah,
like, you know what, that kind of fits you actually, because
yeah, no, absolutely.
he's really been a very exemplary player. He's obviously a local player. He's brought up from within the academy. He's the academy player with the most minutes in the first team now. So for me, like, I mean, I think Ismail Kone overall is probably more talented. Just the natural talent. I think it's a little bit hard to compare them.
Yeah,
However, as far as playing the role like Kone played last year, yeah, I think Mathieu Chouanière, I cannot imagine dislodging him from this midfield right now
yeah,
at
I
all.
completely agree. Yeah, I completely agree. He's
Like,
first name on the
all
team
my
sheet
respect
for
to
sure.
Sam Piet,
Yeah,
truly.
first
And
he has to
especially,
be on the team sheet every game. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, and especially if Bryce Duke and Aaron Herrera are developing a chemistry, and if that chemistry is something that's going to continue playing out match after match, then I also think both of them need to be on the team sheet. And well, I know Herrera is not in the midfield, but you know what I mean. And then you're like, wow, what do we do?
Yeah,
Yep.
you could have this. Given that Schwanyat does enjoy playing at the 10, you could have him up there, and then I have Piet
Mm,
as that ball winner. But last night also brought up a new problem, and the fact that I don't think Chinonzo 4 can play as a lone striker. You saw it against
no.
DC, and he was miserable.
Oh,
But
that was,
Ariel
yeah.
Last again, Bryce Duke is and I was talking about this. I tweeted about this after the game. Ariel Laster is sorry, Bryce Duke is obviously the big get from this trade, but Ariel Laster is
Mm-hmm.
quietly going to be an absolute steal. He's
Mm-hmm.
already shown it. He brings something
He's,
to this team that already isn't there. And like, yes, Ramon Kyoto is very fast and he runs like a
mm-hmm.
bull. And he
Mm-hmm.
when he picks up speed, there's no stopping him.
Mm-hmm.
But Ariel Aster brings this quickness that, aside from Lassi Lapalainen, isn't really available. So you have a
No.
forward now that can really get wide, get into those positions. And there was one play, again, around just after Montreal scored the first goal, where it was almost textbook what you'd want to see under Losada. You have Iliadis, who broke the line, who split like three defenders, played off to
Mm-hmm.
Chouanière, who just deflected the ball into space, and Laster outran a defender and put the cross into 04, who was who wasn't able to get his foot on it. It was a bit ahead of him. But Ariel Laster brings something to this team going forward that wasn't there before, and it's this burst of pace that is just not available with any other striker on the team. And again, we haven't seen
Mm-hmm.
how Anthony Vilsay moves on the pitch and how he connects. But with every other striker we've seen, Mason Toys, Ibrahim, even Kyoto, that quickness, not necessarily just speed, but that quickness, the ability to get from point A to point B to point C very
Mm-hmm.
quickly and beat defenders to it, is so important.
Yeah.
And the fact that he kind of has that, and the fact that he can maybe hopefully generate some good relationships with the other strikers, means that they will be forced to play with two strikers because of
Mm-hmm.
the fact that no other striker brings what he has. And then
Mm-hmm.
if you play with two proper nines that are 6'2" and 6'3" and 6'4", and they stay in the middle, then you're forced to send them the ball directly.
Yeah.
But if you have someone like last year who can drift out wide, who did a number of times, and you have him darting in
Mm-hmm.
behind, all of a sudden, 04 becomes, one of the concerns. That striker in the middle
Yeah.
becomes one of the many concerns instead of just shoring up the middle because there's no threat out wide. So it'll
No.
be, again, a lot of Tetris that Hernando Sada has to play to make
Yeah.
everything fit together.
Yeah.
And finally, for a good reason, and not for oh
Hallelujah.
God, everyone's playing poorly or
Yes.
injured. So what do I do now?
Exactly. Exactly. And unfortunately, a New York Red Bulls player did leave with, he looked to be in pretty serious discomfort. So unfortunately, this match did not leave the teams unscathed, but
Yeah,
Montreal did manage to make it through this match without adding another injury to their list, which is a small
finally,
miracle in and of
finally.
itself. Yep. And we'll just say hi to Holy Gale with her comment, a player who often flies under the radar. Well done, Mathieu.
Yeah,
Just throwing back to Mathieu
yeah.
Chognot's goal, of
He deserves
course.
all the praise he's getting now because again, all
Absolutely.
season he's been amazing, and he's getting
Yep.
his flowers now, deservedly so.
Yep. No, strongly appreciate him. He's been asked to play 50 million positions and he's
Yeah,
gone into it with grace. And, I'm just so surprised. I think I feel a little bit mean. But, when he first signed and he was so young and he was so little and I was like, the MLS is just going to eat him up alive.
yeah,
And lo and behold, he's adapted. He's matured and he's become, I think, a really clutch player for Montreal. And I think he can have a very Sam Piet vibes and really take up that
mhm,
torch when Sam
absolutely,
Piet's career eventually comes to an end.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, we will see. So as well, I think Patrick agrees with us and says Piet might be coming off the bench, which is weird, but
It's
we'll
weird to see your
see.
captain come off the bench, right? Especially if he's not, he's still physically in his prime,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I don't think he'll
yeah.
enjoy that too much, especially if he still has national team ambitions. I'm sure that he's still,
Oh, for sure.
wants
Yeah.
he's still definitely in the running. He's only 1 year removed from the World Cup, so he's had conversations
Yeah.
with John Herdman, and I think that him
Hmm.
coming off the bench might not go over too well. But that is, of course, a cross that
No,
bridge when
no,
we
I'm
get to
sure.
its situation, because I think he's still got it like a month before he's fit to play. So that's a bit of the
Yeah.
ways down the road.
Yeah. Yes. So, yes, let's not count our chickens before they hatch.
Absolutely.
With that being said, though, is there anything else that you wanted to say on the match before we turn to some questions and comments that we got from our listeners?
No, I mean that's pretty much it, right? Again, the most important
Hmm.
part is the progression. This is a good game. There was
Yeah.
stuff to improve. There's stuff that didn't go over
And there was
so
a
well.
clean sheet.
Now, a clean sheet. We didn't talk about that.
We didn't
Finally, a
even
clean
mention the
sheet.
fact that there was a
We
clean
talked
sheet.
about Jonathan Wow. We talked about the defense, but we didn't bring up the fact that this is their first MLS clean sheet of the season. And
Hallelujah.
was it without its scary moments? But it
Yeah.
was, at the end of the day, last year, a lot of those clean sheets that they got were kind of, iffy, but they get them, right?
Yep.
And teams get the results they need when they need them,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it was finally, like I said at the beginning of the year, that there's a playoff team in this group, and we finally saw at least the beginning of what this team can
Mm-hmm.
do. This is,
Mm-hmm.
again, if this is the bare minimum, if this is the baseline and the start, this is what I meant by, like, there is enough quality for this team. And again, not a 1 seed, not a 2 seed. I don't think they'll be in the top
No.
half of the playoff picture, but 7, 8, 9, 10, definitely,
Okay.
in the running.
I'm
This
like,
team is too
uh-huh.
good to be at the bottom of the standings.
Fair enough. Okay, fair enough. Well, TBT. We'll see. Let's not count those chickens before they hatch either.
No, that
All right. Let's take a look at our questions and comments that we got from some listeners here. So, first up, we have Tate. And I do just want to also say thank you so much to Tate and Nancy. I had a delicious Vermont IPA yesterday at the tailgate, and it was wonderful. And also, of course, it was lovely to catch up with you. So Tate asks us, will CF Montreal acquire a striker before the trade deadline closes tomorrow? So I did also see Patrick, was referencing that there are definitely some rumors and reports of, talks occurring for various players and departures and arrivals and so on. But what do you think, Elias?
I, I would have liked to see, given that, again, we'll talk about this a bit more in depth later, but Rita Zuer, who's been
Mm-hmm.
loaned out, opens up a roster spot. I
Mm-hmm.
think that, they're definitely going to, that was definitely done with intention because they wouldn't just loan a player out mid-season,
Mm-hmm.
especially given that the midfield is still relatively injured. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, whether it's left back, whether it's, we still have to see how Ramel Kyoto's recovery is going and how that'll happen, right? If it turns out to be extended, or if it turns out that there's an
Mm-hmm.
issue with his recovery, then you have to start looking at maybe, reinforcing the forwards. So again, they have, a couple hours before, just over 24 hours before they have to kind of pull the trigger on something. But
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised to see them bring in a new player, because you don't just loan out a youth player who has been getting minutes and has been performing quite well, without the intention of bringing somebody in because you opened up a roster
Yeah.
spot.
Yeah, exactly. It seems a little fishy. It seems a little loaded, I guess would be the word.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the good word for it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to our next question. We have, oh, apologies. It's sometimes my stuff just moves out of order. Justin reaches out with, as great as it is to get a win, is it fair to say that we were more lucky than good? Red Bulls dominated statistically and should have buried some of their good chances. Definitely agree. Like Corey Burke, I don't know what happened to him, because he used to, like, when I would talk to the guys from Philly, we'd be like, Scory Burke, and I'd be like, Scary Burke, because he loved to punish Montreal when he was playing for Philly. But what do you think overall? Like, I agree that there's like a finite amount that we can take out of this match, because both teams
Yeah.
were not were playing with such decimated squads.
Yeah. Exactly.
Um, but that being said, I don't think really Montreal was coming into this with like a whole ton of confidence. So I still think it is worth building on for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, you beat with respect to Vaughn, right? You beat a third division
Mhm.
team. It's not a reason to say, uh,
Mhm.
we're back on top and we're gonna go finish, second in the East. But at the same time, this game does do a lot more good than it does harm. I think that
Mhm.
I, I wouldn't say they may have been dominated in stats, and again, stats can be kind of deceiving, because I do think that Montreal governed the game accordingly for the first half, for the
Mhm.
first hour. And if you go by that metric, then Montreal dominated the game against DC. Montreal dominated the game against Nashville, but we know that's not true. We know that DC
Mhm.
and Nashville handled the game perfectly. And that's the case with Montreal, right? They handled the game perfectly. They didn't go looking for a goal when they were down to 10 men. The opportunity presented to themselves, and they didn't,
Mhm.
panic or anything. And then they kind of just saw their opportunity to counter. They hit back at the perfect time, and they didn't really push
Mhm.
themselves or open themselves up too much when they were defending for the other 20 minutes, because they didn't have to. And they
Yeah.
were, confident in the defense, which is a great show of faith to the back line and to the keeper,
Mhm.
because given
Mhm.
given the fact that you're still the league's worst defense, with a game in hand, I have to say,
Mhm.
uh, does inspire a certain amount of dread. And I think that that's something a lot of people felt when they saw Yadi sent off. So the fact that that confidence from the team was showed internally, I think does a lot
Mhm.
of good for at least the fans, because they handled it perfectly, right? There were
Mhm.
some close calls, but that's all they were, right? There was the
Yeah.
header off the corner that went right at COI, but again, that's all it was. There was, some half chances. There was no golden opportunity when they were down to 10
As-
men, like there was
Aside,
in the
no.
sixth minute,
Yeah.
right? Because even that Glatzing header was at a weird angle, and he did good to just even get it that close,
Yeah.
right? Because it was kind of like a snap header, and he did a very good
Yeah.
job just to make it, that worrisome. So Montreal
Mhm.
handled it rather well for a team that
Fair
is,
enough.
again, the worst defense in MLS. So I think that the stats can be a little bit deceiving.
Okay. Fair enough. Interesting take. Let's move on to our third comment. So Joe Zara says, I like Duke's creativity so far. I know it has only been a few games, but when Miljevic is healthy, do you put both on the starting 11? And we still have poor Mathieu Choignard.
We still have Mr. Chouanier, and there's Sam Piet who's coming back, and there's
Oh
Lester
my
who's
god.
playing well, and there's so I think this
Um,
is another
it's
case
a
of
happy
like
problem.
Hernan Losada has to play Tetris, but for a good reason.
Yeah. Yep.
Because you can't play
I
with 6 midfielders. You're not,
no.
prime the Spanish national team that won all those titles. You have to at some point
No.
sit some midfielders. But
Exactly.
one thing I didn't say about the game that I kind of noticed is
Hmm.
that there's finally someone on the field that is at the same level technically as Victor Wanyama.
Hmm.
Because you see Bryce Duke and Wanyama connecting a lot of times in the
Hmm.
midfield where they trade the ball and the ball is zipping between the two of them. And again, with respect to Mathieu Wanyama, who's had an amazing season, and Sean Rea and Neto Saliba and
Hmm.
Rita Zouir, Victor Wanyama played in the Premier League. Victor Wanyama played in the Champions League. Victor Wanyama technically is at a
Oh,
level that,
yes.
very few players in MLS are. So it's nice to see someone that can at least keep up with Victor Wanyama with
Hmm.
the ball. So that was kind of nice to see, because I kind of feel like Victor Wanyama this season has been a little bit more all right, fine, I'm just gonna move the ball, because you don't have Ismail Kone, you don't have Georgia Mihailovic to play
Hmm.
with in the midfield, and that kind of does
Hmm.
make you miss, I love just knocking the ball around with them. So I think the arrival of Bryce Duke kind of maybe reinvigorated that. You did see Wanyama
Good. Yeah.
just
No, I
moving the
agree. He
ball for
seemed.
fun
Yeah.
for once, right?
Yeah.
And that was nice to see. And I think that Duke is absolutely someone that's going to be starting, and
Hmm.
Miljevic does have a lot of work to do to kind of regain the hype and the status that he had when he
Yeah.
was in training camp, where he was going to be the guy in the midfield.
Yeah.
Um, and it also is worth mentioning that, like, if Miljevic doesn't get hurt, do they even go out and spend that much on Bryce Duke?
Yeah. I
He
wonder.
was someone they had on their radar for a while, but at the
Hmm.
same time, Bryce Duke was an addition out of desperate need. So
Hmm.
that also, and
Yeah.
that makes you wonder a little bit about the timing of everything.
Hmm. No, I agree. But no, for me, I think I could see them both theoretically starting together because they do have such different styles. Mako Miljevic is
Yeah,
a lot more of a dribbler. He's got that technique. Whereas Bryce Duke is more of a creative passer, and he's willing and he can find those half spaces, or draw opposition players to him, and free up space for his teammates. So I could see them, because it's not as though they're going to be trying to play the exact same game. They do have such different qualities that they bring. I could definitely see them starting matches together.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but interesting question. All right. Will we take a hop back in time, and
Yeah,
just quickly hit on Tuesday's match over Vaughan? Because, of course, we did talk a little bit about that last week. I haven't prepared anything like super formal on it, but just sort of, how that went. Because although Hernan Lozada said he wasn't going to do any rotation, I think maybe he did a
just a
little more
whole
than
lot
he
of
let
rotation,
on. just a little bit.
just a
A
little
little
bit.
bit
Yeah,
more than he let on. And so we did kind of get our first chance to really get get our eyes on some players, say, for an extended period, which is always something that you want to see, like those guys like Robert Thorkelson
yeah,
and some other folks, and Logan Ketterer.
yeah. I
So
mean, one game with the club, one clean sheet. You have to love that ratio.
100% record, we love
Has
that.
never conceded a goal in his 2 years with the club. So hey, you know
Honest
what?
to
I
God,
gotta
yeah,
respect that.
probably good to retire. So anyway, just to quickly remind everyone, like, we're not going to do a huge breakdown on this game, because there's only so much that one can analyze from that match. So we had Logan Carter in goal, Gabriela Corbo, Rudy Camacho, and Robert Thorkelson as your three center backs, with Sean Rea and Elias, I guess, on your flanks. Then we had Mathieu Chouanière and Rita Zuhir in the midfield, along with Bryce Duke, and Sanusi Ibrahim up top with Ariel Lassiter.
Yeah, I uh, I didn't think too much of the attack. I thought that was unsurprising because of the fact that Sunusi Ibrahim is always seems to turn it on when it comes to the Canadian Championship. He always has good games, and he scored again. Last turn Duke starting makes sense because you want to give him as many minutes as
Mm-hmm.
possible. I am
Mm-hmm.
happy we saw Robert Torkelson because of the
Mm-hmm.
fact that he's the only left-footed center back left. So he
Mm-hmm.
does have this golden opportunity to show that he is that option for the future. Again,
Mm-hmm.
Gabriele Corbo's performance against Red Bulls kind of makes him
Yes.
a shoe in. It kind of hurts Torkelson's standing again,
Yeah.
given the fact that George Campbell's healthy now too. Torkelson's sliding a bit down the depth chart. But at the same time, I do think that Torkelson had a good game. Again,
Yeah.
when you play a team like a third division team, you're not asking too much of the center backs. Of course, Rudy Camacho did have that scary moment like 10
Mm-hmm.
minutes in. But aside from that, right, they had a relatively boring evening. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but again, like we said, right, we wanted to see the intention of them playing. We wanted to see the way that they would play, and we saw that, right. It was direct, it was
Mm-hmm.
line breaking, it was getting the
Yeah.
balls in from the flanks with good crosses and stuff like that. So we did see
Yep.
that, and it was nice to see Leicester get on the score sheet as well. But
Yes.
ultimately, there wasn't like above that. I didn't really get that much else out of the game.
No,
You
I
win the game
just,
you were supposed to win, and on to the next one.
yep. Yeah, exactly. And just happy for Sean Rea to get his first
Yeah,
goal, of
that
course,
was also
for
a great
Montreal.
touch too in the box, right?
Yeah.
That was not an easy goal to score, the touch and the
No,
finish. So good for him.
no, it was a lovely goal, and he tried valiantly to score several times
Yeah,
earlier in the match, and so finally, he after calling the Vaughan keeper into action several times, lo and behold, he scored, and I was really happy. And of course, in Canadian Championship, you would love stories like that to have your local players, scoring goals and winning the match for you. So really happy for him, and I was glad as well that he kind of got like a full run out, because although he's had some starts in MLS, I think the adjustment period is definitely still going on for him, which is totally normal. But no. So yeah, overall, on to the next, like you said, and the
job done.
next,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, the
job
next
done.
one
We move
is
on.
going to be quite a job
Yes,
because
May
they will be
9th.
traveling. Is it set in stone May 9th
It's
now?
confirmed. It's confirmed May
Okay.
9th at BMO
Okay.
Field against
Yeah.
the
Those
dreaded
guys.
Toronto FC. Those
Yeah. Those
guys.
guys. Those guys.
Those who shall
Uh,
not be named. Yes.
exactly. Oh, that's I was talking. I joined a CanFC,
Mhm.
their podcast on the Canadian national team, and it came up, and I said, like, because we talked about how is it always this, and so on and so forth, and
Always.
I said, like, look, they started televising the draws now on One Soccer, like they can. Before, they used to just like go behind closed doors and flip coins or whatever the hell they were doing to decide these. Like, that's what they said at some point. There was a coin toss. It
Really?
was for, I think, who
I've never
hosted
heard
the
of that.
2021 final.
Oh my god.
I Yeah, I want to say, like, they even tweeted it. Canada Soccer did. It was like a secret coin
That's
toss.
very Canada Soccer of them.
It it don't like. I'm gonna double check this when I go back, but I distinctly recall there being a coin toss, and I know Kevin Gilmore was there, so maybe it was 2020 didn't happen.
Maybe
Must have been
2021.
2021. Must have been
Yeah.
2021. Um, yeah. Anyway, I digress. That was a weird tangent about my conspiracy theories now being debunked because they televise their draws. Not that those can't, be manipulated, but I'm not going to say anything more. Um,
Conspiracy theory time.
yep, yep. Just make little tinfoil hats for my next episode. That being said, yeah, no. So we'll see. Certainly, I'm not terribly optimistic because BMO Field is not a particularly friendly venue for Montreal. Like, I know they did win their last season in MLS. However, they got spanked last year in Canadian Championship 4-0. And I'm hoping that Hernan Lozada takes this one pretty darn seriously.
Thank
Toronto's
you.
not off to a fantastic start this season either, despite like all the power that they have in their arsenal. And so I could also see them wanting you to take this seriously as well.
I know it's also a derby game, right? Nobody takes it
Mm-hmm.
lightly, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that Fernando Sada is well aware of what's at stake in a derby game. He's probably participated in countless throughout his career.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if DC has a derby game, but everywhere I'm sure that he's taken part in Belgium and in Argentina because there it's a lot more derby oriented, and
Mm-hmm.
Canadian Classic is the biggest rivalry in MLS, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Others may have bigger stars, but this is definitely the oldest rivalry, and it's definitely the most bitter one. And I think
Yeah.
that he will have no trouble finding out just how bitter it is, rather quickly, just by
Oh yeah.
talking to players and the history behind it. I'm sure that he's very well aware of what's at
Yeah.
stake, and he'll be approaching the game with all
I
that
hope so.
knowledge.
I
Better
strongly
be.
hope so. No pressure.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So honestly, like, that really is all we had for news. Like,
Okay.
overall national team wise, it's been pretty quiet. I will say though, before we move on, I just wanted to call something like incredibly wild out. Our women's under 20 team qualified for the
Yeah,
CONCACAF W Championship with a cumulative
but
goal difference of plus 38. They scored 40 goals and conceded one across their 3 matches, which is just
insane.
insanity.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah. Like,
Maybe they'll win
kudos
the
to
World Cup.
them.
Holy crap! Yeah,
I was like, wow. So that was really impressive, and I was really really thrilled to see that. Of course, we also had a Quebecois captaining the team. Florian Jourde
yes,
was wearing the armband, which we love to see, of course, here in Montreal. So yeah, just I'm keeping my eye on that. Of course, now their qualifier has wrapped up, but when they get moving on to the W Championship, definitely going to be tuning into that because it looks like they are firing on all cylinders.
yeah. That you could say
Yeah.
that.
Alrighty. So shall I turn it over to you, my good sir, for social media?
Let's do it. Yes. Oh, poor Hattie's already asleep. He can't hear the social media tweeting. Oh,
Alas. I'll have to catch up this week and
poor
appreciate it.
guy. Yeah. So
Oh,
it's still been a relatively eventful
yeah.
week on the Twitters. Yeah.
On
So
the
CF
Twitter.
Montreal is from Giuseppe Campanelli. CF Montreal midfielder Rita Zuir will be going on loan to USL Club San Antonio for Tom Bogert. This kind of does, bridge into what we were talking about before with bringing in a
Mm-hmm.
player at the deadline. This now opens up a player spot. Do you
Mm-hmm.
have anybody that's on your wish list? Again, people are talking about a DP striker, people are talking about a wingback. Who
Mm-hmm.
is on? What kind of player rather is on Eve's wish list for that roster spot or to bring in?
You know, I mean, yes, everybody would love to have like, a super fancy DP and things like that for sure. But I think if I'm going to be pragmatic about it, then I would have to say a left wing back and like somebody who can actually truly own that position. Because I think it's no coincidence that Lasiolap Linen's best match was when he played at the right side of the pitch.
It's definitely not a
Um,
coincidence.
no,
And also
exactly.
someone that Georgia Kleiser can learn from, right? Because he's still young, he's
Exactly.
still relatively inexperienced in that role. So somebody that he can kind of shadow would be nice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And like Patrick said, just so we can
Yep.
imagine, Wanyama, Shwanyar, Duke,
Hadouken,
Miljevic, and an insert DP striker could look good. And
Yeah,
I agree.
that
I
could be
can
something
dream.
too. That could be very interesting. But
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
you do need a wing back to fill those flanks if you're only going to have one striker.
Exactly.
So a DP striker
No.
is nice, but if you end
Mm-hmm.
up playing long balls to them all game and that's it, then they don't
Mm-hmm.
look like a DP striker
Mm-hmm.
unless it's
I
Christian
will say
Benteke
though,
or something.
yeah. I will say though, are you kind of like I was kind of surprised that it's Rita Zuhir who's being loaned out. And it certainly looks like that is the case. Obviously, it's
Yeah,
not been like officially stated yet, but he did post on his Instagram, like basically see you soon to Montreal this morning. So I would assume then that that is most likely happening.
yeah,
But are you kind of surprised that
a little bit.
he's the one departing?
Of
Yeah.
all the people that could get loaned out, I understand why someone like Iliadis didn't, but someone like Nathan Saliba would be a perfect opportunity to loan out,
I
right? Because
kind of,
again, these are
yeah.
both players that came directly from the academy, from the PLSQ. But Ali Zouir has a season under his belt in MLS. He has a season with the club. Nathan Saliba,
Yeah.
this is his first year. This is he's played some minutes, and it's very clear that he still needs time to adjust. And I think that having him loaned out to a second division team would be infinitely more helpful than have him sitting on the bench. I know
Yeah.
he's not 100% fit now, and that could have something to do with why he wasn't loaned out and Zuir was. But at
Mm.
the same time, I'm rather
Yeah.
surprised because Zuir's had good moments, and Zuir is kind of being groomed to be that really energetic, ball-winning defensive midfielder.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, more minutes will only be good for him, and hopefully he comes back with a lot more experience, and he's grown as a
Yeah.
player. But I agree. I am quite surprised that he was the one that got loaned out.
Yeah, I agree overall. All right. Next tweet.
Yes, this is from Gaetano Tutocalcio. It says Bryce is
Mm.
awesome and will be amazing, amazing player, effortless elegance, a sign of incredible quality, skills, and vision. What does a season? What does a successful season for Bryce Duke look like, in your opinion? Right, because again, he's not someone that's going to be scoring a bunch of. He's not going to be like Georgi Mihailovic, where he's gonna be scoring a bunch of goals,
Mm-hmm.
getting a bunch of assists, really
Mm-hmm.
in the penalty area doing his business. He's
Mm-hmm.
kind of more of a, like you said, he's more of a creator. He's more of putting other people in those positions to
Mm-hmm.
get on the
Like in
score
the
sheet.
limelight, yeah.
What does a successful season for Bryce Duke look like if this is the kind of performance we're getting after just a week?
Mm-hmm. I mean, certainly, I think he is going to want to find himself. Like maybe he won't be as prolific a goal scorer just based on kind of how I've seen so far. And well, let's face it, it doesn't look like we're in for a prolific goal scoring year in Montreal anyway. At the rate
Yeah,
things are going, um, I think definitely he is going to want to rack up some assists because he is putting players in positions, and especially in MLS where they do count the secondary assist as
that
well.
is true. I didn't even think of that.
Um,
That's true.
yeah. Yeah. So I think for him, definitely those are going to be like more, of course, all players want to score goals, but I think taking into account his skill set, I think assists are going to be a major driver for him. I also think, he will want to retain that starting spot that he kind of has free reign on right now, by virtue of his experience in MLS and, just the breath of fresh air kind of that he's brought in. And so absolutely, I think when Mako Miljevic comes back, depending on how Hernan Lozada wants to deploy these players, there could definitely be a pretty fierce competition. But I think racking up assists is going to be a good indicator of Bryce Duke's success this year.
Yeah, that's right. And think about the secondary assists. Hopefully, he can get a bunch of those because I mean,
Mm-hmm.
technically, if Ofor had scored that instead of the own goal, that would have been his first secondary assist, right? So,
Yeah.
hopefully, more of that, please, and thank you.
Yes, please. All right, shall we? Next
Yes.
up.
Yes, this is from Nicolas Brassard. It's in French, but special
Oh
night
yeah.
yesterday at Stade Saputo. So the Ultras 1642 Montreal, who do ring the bell every time Montreal score, and if they win, they invited the Legenkovska family from who migrated here from Ukraine after the invasion, and whose daughter Maria tragically passed away a few months after their arrival. They were the ones ringing the bell at the stadium, and
Mm-hmm.
that's incredible because we've seen Ukrainian flags in the supporter section a number of times, and
Mm-hmm.
it's nice to see that they're really embracing all the people that have come here after the
Well,
invasion.
yeah.
And
Well,
Montreal
I
is such
mean,
a
and
large Ukrainian community as well, so
they
it's nice to see that they're getting some much needed representation.
Yeah, and I mean that family has obviously been through so
Yeah,
much. And so I was actually like almost a little bit concerned. I was like, "Oh my god, they're not going to score any goals." I was like, "Oh my god, this poor family." Like, I was like, "They're not." I was like, "Just score a goal. I don't care if you lose. Just score a goal for God's sake."
just have them ring
Um,
the bell, damn it.
yeah, but no, no, no. It was a really nice gesture. So no, it was a really nice gesture. It was really nice to see that, and I hope they had a good time, and I hope they had a lot of fun. It certainly looked like they did. So I
Yeah,
hope it
I
was
mean,
a,
hey,
a great evening for
who's gonna
them.
have fun at a 2-0 win, right?
Exactly. Well, the losing team probably. Although I will
Yes,
say, like,
that's right.
just a little bit off topic, but there were some New York Red Bulls fans who we met up with at the tailgate, and they were lovely people. They were
Yeah, the
awesome.
supporter section, the away section looked decent, like half full. There was a decent amount of away
Yeah,
supporters that were here today.
yeah. No, the folks we met up with were awesome, and like they seemed into Montreal. I was like, oh, God love you. They're like, it's my favorite away day, and I was like, oh my God, you're my favorite. So anyway, it was yeah. So that was just came to my mind. But
Yeah,
anyway, shall we
so
move
many
on
away
to our
fans love coming to Montreal, and it's just like, yeah, just wait till you
yeah.
get stuck in traffic and spend a winter here. Then maybe you won't be
Yeah,
so
no,
sweet
and
on
that's the
you.
thing. MLS doesn't happen in winter, so
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
probably be
So
singing a different tune. Although
you
I can
get the best
imagine
months
if
of Montreal.
exactly. Alrighty,
Yes.
number
So this is
4.
from Rhonda Brownlee, and this is some news out of the national team camps, and not good news. That is Quinn, who was supposed to make, or who did make their debut for, well, not their debut, their return for the OL
Yeah.
Reign, and well, that's their ankle. So again, that's never a good sign, especially for someone who just got back from injury. Between and again, they're missing, they're confirmed to be missing time because of that ankle
Mm-hmm.
injury. Between that and the images that surface of Kadisha Buchanan wearing a proper boot, just how worried are you about the Canadian defense going into the World Cup?
I mean, because what we had heard, at least for Ganesha Buchanan, obviously this is a recent injury for Quinn, so I'm not 100% sure how long they will be expected to be out. But for Keisha Buchanan, it sounded as though it wasn't like a big deal. But then, yeah, sure enough, yesterday there were pictures of her at the Champions League semifinal in a boot, and I was like, "What are you doing?" I mean, Vanessa Gilles is still so important. So as long as she's kicking around, I'm good. Shalina Zadorsky, you know, she's on the road to recovery, kind of with her health issues. It could look a little iffy. It certainly could.
I
um,
mean,
like, stop getting banged up, please. Just stop.
yeah,
Don't know
all
how
of a
else to
sudden,
say it.
them maybe not getting too many minutes is probably for the best. Just wrap
Mm-hmm.
them in bubble wrap and
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
wait till July.
Oh, I know. Oh, that reminds me. I just want to go back to a comment, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
just
of course.
because we forgot to talk about it. So Chan mentioned Montreal
We did not
was
talk about
wearing
the
blue.
kits. Oh
We
my
did not
god.
talk about that.
Oh
And
my
actually, I want to talk
freaking
about
god.
two things. I have like
Go
a
ahead.
point from each game to make about the kit. So for the
Go for
Vaughn,
it.
okay, the black shorts make the gray top look so much less depressing.
So much better. So much
Can
better.
they please do that going forward?
Please. I beg.
Like,
I
I
beg.
implore you. I tweeted it.
Yeah.
I put it out into the world. I'm trying to manifest it. So anyway, yes, but the plastic kits that they do every year, of course, for Earth
So
Day,
good.
they looked really good. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
this was a good addition.
They,
Yeah,
yeah. I
and
wasn't a fan of the blue ones. I wasn't a fan of the away ones. They looked a bit too
no, I
much
agree.
like
Kind of like
Play-Doh
hospital
almost.
scrubs color.
Yeah, it was not a great color, but the home ones looked
Mm-hmm.
amazing. And I saw them in a couple
Yeah,
other games and they looked spectacular. They were so cool. I agree.
yeah, yeah. It does always confuse me though, when they do this, because I'm like, whose highlights am I watching? So anyway, that's my personal struggle. Yeah, the home kit looked phenomenal.
Yeah,
So
so happy with
excellent.
it.
Sorry for that little aside. Yeah, just took a little detour, but
Yeah,
nonetheless.
tangent.
Final tweet, my good sir. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes, so this is from Alexander Gangier-Ruzik. Again, and it's also something that Chan commented. 6 weeks would take Alphonso Davies right up until about a week before the Nations League final in Vegas. So certainly going to be interesting to see how his hamstring recovery goes by then. Tough end to his topsy-turvy year for Bayern. For those who don't know, Alphonso Davies pulled up like 5 or 10 minutes into this weekend's game against Mainz for Bayern Munich. Immediately came off. Hamstring injuries are never fun, especially when you're someone who
Mm-hmm.
runs as much as Alphonso Davies runs. It has been a problem area for him in the past, and it's kind of resurfacing again. This team does kind of rely on Alphonso Davies in terms of spirit. I do feel like he's one of the driving forces behind them, but this team has quality elsewhere. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
Alphonso Davies is the best player on the team, but you have someone like Jonathan David who's second in scoring in Ligue 1 behind just Kylian Mbappe. You have someone like Kyle Larin who seems to have found second life. Teja
Mm-hmm.
Buchanan who's still progressing very nicely. So going forward, yes, losing Alphonso Davies is terrible,
I
but is it
mean,
the end all be all?
they played several World Cup qualifying matches without him and lived to tell the tale.
Yeah, they did.
One of which was against the US. Which is like, stiff competition for sure. Obviously though, yeah, it's ideal to have your talismanic player there with you. Although it was really cute to watch the games on like Twitch with him. It was really cute.
Yeah, those were fun.
Um,
Those were fun.
yeah, but no, it is obviously definitely ideal to have your emblematic, most talented, just your player who can make something out of nothing, any
Mhm.
day of the week. Yeah, so you'll definitely want him to be available for sure. And I think we will all cross our fingers tightly. I have some very gently used hamstring muscles, like basically brand new in the package. If like they need to graft something in, I'm willing to offer mine up because yeah, they're pretty much mint condition, never used.
They took a chunk of my hamstring to fix my ACL, so I don't think I can offer anymore. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Nope. Nope. My I'm good. I'm good. I will sacrifice, fear not. Um, And I believe that does wrap up social media for us.
That does wrap up social media. So yeah, so mostly good news coming from the world of Montreal and Canadian soccer. Again, injury concerns. Even if
Yeah,
if Montreal's getting out of it, the Canadian national teams now are
it
facing
seems to
injury
be picking it
concerns.
up. Mm-hmm.
So can't ever
Yeah.
have, just one day of quiet and no injuries. That's all. Just one day.
Mm-mm.
But no, God
No,
forbid.
no, exactly. So that'll do it for this episode of The Ball is Round. As always, thank you so much to everybody who listened along live with us this evening or who tunes in throughout the week. We appreciate you tremendously. Thanks as well to those of you who sent along your comments and questions. Really grateful for that as well. We do have a Patreon that exists if you want to support and help us grow our project. However, our content is always going to remain free for anyone who wants to listen to it. That being said, we should be back with 3 hosts next week. Hady should hopefully be recovered from his travel woes. And
No,
we
we'll
will
make
look
him
for,
stay up and do the pod. We will make him.
yeah, or we'll just bully him into it, one or the other.
Exactly. Just, we'll have a constant IV of Red Bull and he'll just stay up and do the pod.
There you go. With that being said, thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next Sunday.
Have a good week, everybody.